Welcome back to JKMoto Podcast, a weekly motorcycle podcast for the everyday motorcyclist, covering current bike news and specializing in track riding and club racing. We truly do it all. This week, brought to you once again by Working Class Customs, which is a custom fabrication shop out of northern Utah. And once again, as always, you can direct any further questions on Working Class Customs to Cole. What?
To Cole. Sorry. Nice.
Nice. Yeah.
Are you gonna teach us how to ride today?
Am I gonna teach you how to ride today? What do you mean?
You're gonna give me a tidbit to take into next week so I can contemplate, learn, improve the game, if you will?
Yeah, actually, I do have another weekly riding tip. And this week's weekly riding tip is brought to you once again by Bittinger Motorsports, which is a motorcycle coaching school down in Houston, Texas. Go check them out. Link is down in the description. Josh Bittinger sent over kind of more of a tech tip, I would say, today, but definitely a healthy tip that I think is something we might take for granted. I'll read it. I'll just read it. All right. He says, a faulty tire warmer can lead to cold tire-related accidents. Always leave one glove off and check your tires with your bare hand beneath your warmers before going out. A green light on your warmer doesn't guarantee that the tire is actually warm. Which, when I read that earlier, I was like, that's true. The electricity could be to the warmer and the warmer element's not working, and I mean, there's a lot of different things could definitely go wrong. And if you go out on cold tires that you think are warm, you definitely have some big issues. So once again, that tip brought to you by Bittinger Motorsports. Go check them out. Links down in the description. If you're in the central area, go ride with Josh or Ride Smart or any of the guys down there in southern Texas.
Perfect. I like that one. I've seen more than one time somebody try to go out and realize that their tires were not warm for one reason or another.
Right. Yeah.
Not always. Yeah, I know. Not always just a failure, but maybe they forgot to plug it in even.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I mean, the first step would be looking for the green light. If you don't have a light on or something indicating that your tire warmer is working, then you might not even need the glove check. But it is always, I mean, it's just one of those things to kind of add to your quick list of things. You always make sure your helmet's strapped up, make sure your jacket's zipped up, make sure your tires are actually warm, right? Like easy things that you can do to prevent a major mishap right off the bat. So definitely a great tip. Anyway, what are we getting into tonight, Cole?
Well, tonight we have a new guest on the show. We'll be joined by Lauren Prince, a longtime motorcycle rider, currently competing in the Build Train race. And we thought it'd be a good idea to pick her brain and see what it's like. This is her second season, so she's got one season under her belt, so she should know what to expect this year around.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I'm excited to get her on here, get to know a little bit about that program, a little bit about her, and, you know, general motorcycle talk. Real quick, though, before we roll that intro and get started, just wanted to mention, if you're here with us on YouTube, thanks for being here. Please subscribe to the channel down below. Throw a like on the video. And if you don't want to stick around for an hour to an hour and a half, maybe even 2 hour long podcast, we understand that. Go hop over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever your favorite platform is. Find us there, JKMoto Podcast. You can Google it. We're everywhere. And listen on there. Definitely a great show for your your daily commute to work or whatever else it might be.
Yesterday at one point, I was in sixth. 153 miles an hour.
Did you watch World Superbike?
So on Saturday, I got on the website and I clicked on a video and I thought it was a race, and it was a race, but it was definitely the smaller bike class. And so I watched that, and that's all I watched. Sorry. But I'm assuming you have some news.
I won my bet.
Okay. So Top Rack beat, remind me, Ray?
Ray, yes. So the bet was that Top Rack would finish ahead of Ray. And since we I don't remember if we did that on camera or off camera, but we worked it out behind the scenes. We said there's 2 races in World Superbike, one Saturday, one Sunday. So it was the best average finish from those 2 races with the Super Pole as a tiebreaker. Top Rack destroyed Ray in the first round. So going into Sunday, he only needed to finish 12th or better. And then going into like the first or second lap after huge delays all day for that Sunday race, they had all kinds of problems. Top Rack's bike exploded. Like a space shuttle.
A BMW exploded?
Yeah, it must be. It's got to be sugar in the tank from some of the competitors.
He did so good his first day that he definitely took. But what's the other news there?
So the bike blows up, and I went, oh no, the only way I can win this now is if Ray crashes, soon. And Ray crashed soon, so I feel like I might have done that to him, and I feel a little guilty now. Because Ray crashed and finished more than Top Rack, so I'm not sure what the thing shows, but he should be at least 1 position ahead of Top Rack, but not enough to make up the 12 places or whatever that he was behind from the day before. So I am the winner.
Yeah, I just looked up the results, and it looks like also in case there was a tie, even the Super Pole, Top Rack did pretty good.
He looked. I mean, it just goes to show. It definitely goes to show, though, what a top quality rider can actually do.
Mm-hmm.
Because where were the other 3 BMWs? Same place as always, fighting to get in the top 10.
Yeah,
I mean that's basically what they did all last year. So
predictions, all emotions and personal whatever's aside, are we going to see a top 3 every week, or is it going to take him a while to get used to this bike?
I don't know if you remember, but I mentioned this is not his favorite track. Phillip Island is not his favorite track because there's no hard braking.
Right. I do remember you mentioning that, and it makes sense that if there's no hard braking, he's not a fan. So
yeah, I think there's definitely going to be tracks that are going to be more up his alley that he can do better on. Also, they'll continue learning with the bike, learning each other. That did nothing. I mean, it was pretty unfortunate, the bike blowing up. I don't know what the deal was there, but I come out of that with higher hopes than I had before.
BMW's mechanical issues, they kind of go hand in hand. So,
oh, come on.
What are you doing right now? Or what have you been doing for the last week out in the shop?
Yeah, but it's self-inflicted.
Okay. Because you bought a BMW.
Yeah, I've got like 20-something hours invested into those things over this weekend.
That's pretty good. Pretty good.
But those are ancient bikes. Them BMWs don't owe me anything.
That's true.
Now, the new one blows up on me, race 1 or 2, I'm going to be offended.
Well, hi. It's nice to meet you, first of all.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, I was getting
nice
to that.
See your... Oh, sorry. I stole your thunder. I was going to say it's nice to see your face since most of our conversations, I was looking at the back of your head.
That's funny.
That's true. That's true. I mean, that sounds weirder than it is. We were just in a truck.
Yeah, I guess you could take that a lot of different directions, but I mean, we had some face-to-face interactions before that too, but
right.
It was a good ride.
It was a good run. It was an interesting conversation.
Where was this truck? Remind me.
Brainerd.
We met at Brainerd, and we had a leisurely long ride back to the airport. We had some detours along the way. So.
Oh, nothing too major. Just
nothing, but
some lively interactions with the locals.
Yeah.
Lively Brainerd locals. All right, I got it.
I mean, Minnesota.
Yeah.
They got to have something going for, right? Besides just the houseboat mosquitoes and whatever the other stereotypes
Yeah,
are. Lake
maple
Worshion.
syrup, hockey, all the, Southern Canada.
And Arnie
Yeah.
Palmer's.
Well, hey, since I don't know you actually, and we're kind of starting all weird here today, do you mind introducing yourself real quick? Give us a quick kind of background and who you are and what you do and whatnot.
Sure. I mean, I guess it'd be fun to stir the pot a little and just be like, well, what the heck do you know? Because you got pitched on me and said yes. So you got some brief bio.
Something.
What did Cole say about me is what she's saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could get into those details, but I don't know if we need to share those details tonight.
You're a man who's
That-
easily swayed or with bad judgment, one of the two then. Which, hey, my kind of people.
I do ride motorcycles after all. So
Yeah, we're all guilty of excellent judgment, obviously. Yeah, my name's Lauren Prince. I'm on here because I ride with Build Train Race, which is a product of Royal Enfield. So I did one season of Moto America with them last year, and then I race here locally in Southern California with CVMA and CRA. But in the bigger picture, I don't know how much backstory you're looking for, but I'm originally from Tennessee. Lived out in Oregon for a number of years, bounced around, lived in Wisconsin, Colorado, Thailand, parts of Africa, like really all over before
Okay.
landing in Long Beach, California. And I like probably other people you've chatted with, or maybe yourselves, like I'm really new to motorcycles in general. I've been riding almost exactly 3 years. So the fact that I got to be in the Moto America paddock is really astounding, and just, have dived right in and been on this insane learning curve and just love this community and the people that are in it. And it's just a special thing to be a part of. So,
All right,
Yeah.
perfect. Let's pick some of that apart.
yeah.
here we go.
Why are you living in so many places? Are you crazy?
Specifically, Thailand, Africa. Like the Tennessee, Oregon thing was like, okay, yeah, the U.S. I got it, and then like,
Ball, sure,
what?
yeah. Yeah, this is where my bio is never that straightforward. So I'm in Long Beach because I got a job here during COVID. I'm a veterinarian, and this is my second career. So my first career was more like politics and political organizing, as well as some international development. So I worked in Madagascar for a time with WWF, not the Wrestling Federation, but the World Wildlife Protection Fund. Then Thailand specifically was like, I had to get out of politics. I was getting miserable. I didn't want campaign manager or lobbyist after my name. I just didn't want that trajectory, and got an invitation to speak at a conference in Borneo on a one-way ticket, and said, yeah. Well, actually, they offered me a round trip ticket. It wasn't like I was going to kidnap to Borneo, but
I was
I
going to
was
say.
wrapping up a couple of campaigns and like pretty well networked in the Portland and Northwest area. I just wasn't finding things that I wanted to do, and that opportunity came along, and I figured it was a good way as any to kind of convert it into seeing more of the world and figuring out some stuff. And also, I did have a desire to ride on two wheels. So while I've only been riding motorcycles for 3 years, I did start riding there on a manual scooter. And so that's where I kind of learned some of how to ride. And that was my main transportation. And I remember like going around on some of the country roads. I was like volunteering and working on different projects while I was over there. I'd always like lean over and go meow as I'm like grabbing the throttle. So it's definitely a portent of things to come.
So does a lot of the scooter theory translate over to?
I mean, I think in that case it did, because I was on a manual. Like I still had to figure out how to shift and use a clutch and all of those things.
Mhm.
I think what translated over was, if you learn on a smaller bike, you make a lot of those mistakes where there's less consequences. So I definitely remember like coming up to stop signs, or like, you're in a pack of riders when you're on the streets in Thailand. I was mostly in northern Thailand, so it wasn't as crazy as Bangkok, but still like you're moving around with a ton of riders going in all kinds of different chaotic directions. And so just figuring out, how do I manage myself and how do I operate this machinery? And like, sometimes like I wasn't good on the throttle and I jump forward and then I've hit the brakes and then nearly tip over. And like these things that you kind of do as you're learning where you're like, oops, that didn't go so well. Like, let's try to not do that again. But I did it on, a little scooter that I don't even know. I mean, it couldn't have been like more than 20 horsepower, probably. I don't think it got above 55 miles an hour going downhill with the breeze behind me, a tailwind. But yeah, that principle of start on smaller things and develop your skills and build up to managing power, I think definitely applied.
Okay.
Was that your first experience on two wheels then? Over there, just kind of
more or less, yeah. I had an uncle who had a bike growing up, and I totally like esteemed and revered him. And he'd like lived on his bike, traveled cross country as a 15-year-old. I don't know how the heck he got a Triumph in like the 50s and 60s in Alabama, but he and his buddy just one point put their bags on the back of it and like skipped out of high school. And then after they graduated, they went out to Washington and lived in a shanty lean-to for a couple of years, and all that was on their motorcycle. So like the motorcycling thing wasn't foreign to me. I just never got to be as much a part of it. And like I had cousins who had a dirt bike. I remember at one point, like we were out like, kind of in a floodplain by my uncle's house in Alabama, and they had their cool new dirt bike out and learned, "Do you want to come with?" And I was like, oh, yes, hell yes. Hell's allowed, right? Does that count as against our rules and curse words? Okay.
You're good.
I was like, hell yes, but I had no idea what a clutch was. So now, like, as I look back on it, I know what I did, but I totally just whiskey throttled it off the gate because I didn't know how to like slowly start it. So I think they got it going and then like they released the clutch and then suddenly it popped and like I was taken off, and I think I was grabbing the clutch thinking that it was the brake and nothing was happening. And then suddenly there was like a 5-foot drop off. So my first time on a bike, I crashed it. I have a scar.
All right.
Just to prove it.
Yeah. I usually say, well, never mind. I'm not going to go there.
No, I want to hear. Do share.
Well, no, that's a whole. So normally I would say chicks dig scars, but then I said,
I find crazy. Go ahead. Then you pause because you're worried that'd be offensive, or
no, I wasn't worried about that.
I don't know.
I was just worried about. Yeah. I was playing chess over here. I was like 4 steps ahead.
Oh,
and I didn't like where it was headed, so I stopped.
Certainly.
Mr. Cole being 4 steps ahead.
So, like, there's younger riders on my team. When I went back to school, I was with younger people. I remember, like, they're like, "What's that on your arm?" I was like, "Oh, it's a scar." Start telling about that. Start telling about one over here, one here, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I have a scar. A scar." I don't get this. Yeah. I grew up covered in them, right?
Right.
If you ride motorcycles, you're going to be covered in them. Like, I would agree with that. Yeah. So
yeah, I think
running around the backwoods of Alabama paid off.
What was that quote from? This is a forever ago podcast, but something about you're camping, you're crashing. Go out in the woods, you crash 5 times. Go to the track, you crash 5 times. You're camping, you're crashing. He said that at one point.
I was making the argument that, when you're into road racing and you tell somebody you crashed and then it's the craziest thing they've ever heard, right? You crashed? What? It's the craziest thing. But if you ride a dirt bike and you come back from a camping trip with a family or a motocross weekend or whatever, they're like, how many times did you crash? It's just a different perspective.
Yeah, when you're off road, you're expected to crash. When you're on road, if you crash, you're whoa. So
right, but you can use that to your advantage too, because if you show up to work on Monday, or you don't want to show up to work, more to the point, you tell them you crashed over the weekend, and they're like, "Oh my God, are you okay? Right. Are you sure you need to be here?" Like, yeah. It rang my bell pretty bad. I could use a couple of days to get back together.
Yeah,
I'll see you in 30.
That reminds me of I went to a chiropractor a few months ago and had me fill out this whole sheet of just random info. And part of it was like, have you been in any vehicle accidents recently? And I had recently put my Aprilia down at the track. I was like, well, I kind of wrecked a motorcycle. And the receptionist was like, oh, yeah, we need to know about that. And I was like, okay. So then they had me fill out all this info, and it was like address, speed you were going, was it a crossing street, or was it like how many other vehicles were involved? And I was like, just me, left hand low side, turn blah at Atlanta Motorsports Park. Like,
Yeah.
The
You're
actual
like, you're like, I biffed a turn. It's really not a big deal.
Yeah, it was. The receptionist was like freaking out. The doctor came out and he's like, so you crashed at a racetrack? I was like, yeah. And he's like, anything, like, did you flip over? I'm like, nah, I literally just slid it out. And he's like, okay, I don't care. I was like, all right, sweet. Because I was trying to figure out what address I put for, legal reasons of put motorcycle down at racetrack. And anyway, so if you go to a chiropractor and it's a racetrack accident, I don't know if you need to bring that up. That's my point.
Save the hassle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because like when I started racing, I think this is true for a lot of people. Like maybe you've been riding for a while and you've spent a lot of time at track days, but the idea of going into racing, like, everything's stepped up, right? And so you see that as soon as you start riding, you have riders that are closer to you. You suddenly get this rapid education on what passing actually looks and feels like, and what's kind of actually acceptable and safe versus what's really sketchy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, like, one of the things that blew my mind too is like seeing these bikes just pulled apart. And Lugnut is a great example of this, where like 30 minutes before a race, it doesn't look like there's a bike sitting there on the stand, and then suddenly he's out there winning. And so like you cognitively know that crashing is going to be a part of the race experience. But I think every rider has to kind of navigate that. Like that was something that I definitely had to like find my way through as I transitioned into racing, because you just don't know what that's going to look like, right? Like, because on a track day, like you're done and everybody kind of gathers around you and it's this catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
But then on race weekends, you're kind of like, oh, then you got up and you put the bike back together. It was no big deal, or whatever. Hopefully, right?
Right.
Hopefully.
So what? I mean, is there a story behind that? Your first wreck racing, if you will?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was definitely anxious about what that would be like, particularly like having the career that I do. I mean, not to say that, other people don't have like important careers, but I just finished this expensive education to pursue a career that was super meaningful to me, and I work for myself, so there's not as much of a safety net, and really wondering like, okay, when I encounter a crash, is that something that's going to, physically, really endanger my security and safety, and, like have to go move back home or whatever.
Right.
Am I going to lose my career? If I have some sort of brain trauma, like, is that going to impact my career? Am I going to lose months of work? Like, it was scary, as well as I felt like, I found this thing that I really loved, or rather, I think I always knew that like I loved motorcycles. I'd always been enamored with them. I'd always wanted to ride. And so I worry that like, is crashing gonna be something that freaks me out so much that then I don't want to pursue this anymore? And that, what does that look like to me too?
Right.
Because you guys know, like it's an amazing community, it's an amazing sport, and like all of these implications and all the ways that motorcycles extend so far beyond just like one person is massive. It can be so fulfilling. So, all of those things definitely like went through my head a ton. And my first crash wasn't crazy, but I think everybody's first real crash gonna freak you out.
Yeah.
I ended up crashing at Crash Corner at Chuckwalla, which is a rite of
spot.
passage. Yeah, right. Like, we really just need to do a survey and find out how many people have crashed there. Like, what percentage of our racers have gone down there? and it was a rookie mistake where I leaned off too far and gave it gas too soon in an off-camber section, and the bike ended up spinning up, and like I was facing the wrong side of the track, and suddenly had a sky dirt situation, and thought I'd like broken a rib, and I'd worn through part of my glove, which was kind of, I do a lot of surgery, so that was scary. But then, like, before I even got back to my pit, my buddies were already putting my bike back together, and like I was racing within an hour. So kudos to them and the community for putting me back together. But unfortunately, what happened after that is I was like, okay, I just got my bell rung. I need to get my head right again. I went to a track weekend the next weekend thinking like I'm going to put in a ton of seat time, and I crashed again. And that time, I high-sided in the bowl.
Okay.
So ended up on top of the bowl, which I was really happy to learn that there's actually a top there. It doesn't just drop off.
It's not a sand dune.
Yeah.
Knock on wood, I've never been up there.
So yeah, it kind of feels like it when you go through a bowl a lot of the time. If it's really banked, like there's not like that's the edge of the world across the top of the bowl,
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got launched and high-sided and kind of landed on my head, and I got a concussion, and I was face blind for a while and had deja vu for like a week. And so like all of that definitely like created kind of a reckoning with doing all this, pursuing it.
But it
But
didn't.
here I am. So
It didn't stop you, obviously. So
clearly, per your earlier comment, we're all a little crazy and have screws loose, but
That
you do
could
learn
be-
that's just part of it.
it could be the concussion just wiped away the clean slate. From here on out, we're good. And
That works for me.
How long do you think it took you to get that out of your head when you got back on track? I mean,
Like a month and a half, maybe. I was able to get out to Chuck Wallet. I rode like 5 days in a row because we had a double R fest with Nate Kern, and then Femwalla, and then a SoCal weekend. So I had a long stretch of riding, and I think that kind of let me get my feet back under me. But it was, I'd be lying. I'd say it was really hard to race because I had to race after the crashes before I had that weekend to kind of get back.
okay.
Yeah, it's just all we've had conversations on here before. I get called selfish sometimes for racing because you do take a lot of risks. You put you're taking a lot of chances, and it's just interesting to hear different perspectives. Sometimes people are like, how can you put yourself out there and do something like that? And I always say, well, how can you walk across the street? How can you leave your home? For that matter, your house might start on fire. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I think there's definitely things you can
nothing's
do in this
actually
world
safe.
to nothing's safe. If it's your time,
Yeah,
it's your time.
I mean,
think.
it's all relative risk, right? And I think that's something that hopefully the more you ride, the more you develop judgment around that, as well as you develop skill to mitigate those things. And whether you're a street rider or a canyon rider or you're out on the track, like that's a pretty fundamental aspect of maintaining the ability to ride and do what you love, but also developing the ability to like receive that question and kind of have a thoughtful, self-aware response too, right? Like I guess I could correlate it in a way. Like I used to work in the beer industry, and so we'd have all these meetings where we're drinking beer, and then you have to go from one brewery to another. It was horrible, right? Like just drinking back-to-back IPAs every day. But you have these questions where you're like, alcoholic? I mean, like I do drink like, all these 10% beers on a daily basis, but I do it for work. So, and people in the business too, where you're like, okay, like I'm a little worried about Johnny over there or whatever. And you're like, but I'm not like Johnny, right? Like,
Yeah, it's only at work, not at home, right? So,
right, yeah.
Well, my other argument has always been that whether it's racing or just track days or whatever it might be related to a racetrack, there are regulations on the racetrack. Like if you show up and you don't have a helmet, whether or not it's a helmet state, you ain't riding. If you don't have full gear, you're not riding. Everyone's going the same direction. Everyone's got the same-ish goal. We're all going relatively the same speed with a designated set of rules. There's no cars. There's hopefully no deer and animals or whatever, unless you're in Australia and a bird comes in. Anyway, yeah. But in my opinion, in general, like, people ask how could you do that? That seems so unsafe. Like, how can you wreck and come back? I'm like, well, if I wreck on a racetrack, the chances are that it was because I did something wrong, and there's no other vehicles involved. And so generally, your gear's there for a reason. The way you wreck is going to be a little bit safer. They've got runoffs. They've got all these different things, and then, air fence, whatever it might be. So you're going to get up. You're going to get your bike back together, and you're going to go ride again on the street or wherever else you might ride. I can't speak for Thailand, so who knows out there. But wherever else, there's so many other factors that go into it. So that's kind of been my take on that throughout the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely true, right? But like, we're track and race junkies. At least I assume. I don't know a ton of your story, but of course we're also going to justify that for ourselves too. but there's obviously truth to it. I mean, like, so like I corner work at SoCal Track Days with an organization called Big Heads, and it's primarily racers and other riders who are in the corners, and so we're tasked with watching everybody and trying to maintain a safe environment. And I think from a rider's perspective, that often feels very black and white, right? Like, it doesn't seem like something that would be ambiguous. If there's stuff on the track, that's dangerous. If you have somebody who's riding crazy wonky lines and clearly doesn't know what they're doing and they throw themselves into an A group, like, that's objectively very dangerous. But sitting in the corner stand, sometimes it's not as easy to pull those things apart. And my mentality is like, let's be as proactive as possible to try to prevent something, but figuring out, you don't want to stand in the way of someone else, like, learning and enjoying their time too. And it's hard to sometimes find that line.
Right. So you're saying you don't fall asleep while you're working a corner working?
Not as of yet. Is that something that happens a lot with corner workers that y'all
I don't know. I can't say.
Naming names? We're not naming names.
No names. No names.
We're not going to do names, but have you ever walked out to the edge of the track with a red flag in your hand and tried taking pictures of the bikes driving by?
Not like waving it, but you like have it behind your back, like you've got it ready and your phone's here, so you're kind of doing one of those like chicken wing, holding a flag while you're obviously taking a video of your buddy.
Signature move, maybe?
No, I mean, this is just a theoretical question.
Oh, okay.
For
yeah.
someone that
no.
It's not theoretical. We've seen this happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's dig into that a little bit. Following on Instagram, you are at a track a lot. How often are you doing the corner working? You've been at all the CRAs or the SoCal Track Days. I've seen you've been at a couple of them at least.
Quick plug for anyone that doesn't know what corner working is. You're at a racetrack doing a flagging situation at a corner, as opposed to the other type of corner working that may or may not be out there in the world. There's also a t-shirt that'll be linked. I'll have a t-shirt linked up. We have a corner worker t-shirt. I just wanted to make that special.
Yeah, have you seen it? You need one of them.
Fantastic. You could kind of, blend both of those definitions you just shared by modeling said t-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
My rolling blackout's over. Sorry if things go crazy.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. At any track, it's a controlled environment, per your point, and there's stands at sort of key corners. And like Chuck Walla goes both clockwise and counterclockwise, so depending on the direction, certain stands will be manned more than others. Typically, those, as I understand it, as I've seen it, are staffed by people that live in the area that may or may not be race enthusiasts or participants themselves. And so there can be, also to your point, like a big spectrum of quality.
That's a good way to put it. When it comes to
corner working. I mean, I'm still newer to it with Big Heads. I haven't been doing it for a super long time. I think as someone who's on track, you can feel a difference when you feel like people are paying attention, people are being proactive.
Mm-hmm.
they're being responsive to situations on track. So if someone's off track, needs to re-enter the track, having a yellow flag out, just when you're riding, you want to be so focused on what you're doing. But there are these externalities that can affect your riding and create more dangerous situations. And you need some heads up to be proactive about that. And, you know, especially like something like a bike on track or a rider in the impact zone, or, you know, hopefully not, but someone's injured and in need of aid. That's probably one of my like pet peeves, because it got drilled into me that if you see a red flag, like get off the track, like safely, but as efficiently as possible. It is not the time for a parade lap, because chances are if there's a red flag, it means somebody's really in need of medical attention.
Right.
And that's something that, like, going to different track days, I don't feel like is always communicated.
Yeah,
Do you guys have any crazy flags there?
Crazy?
Because
I don't know, different organizations have different ones.
I think the craziest that we've seen was up at Thunder Hill. And Cole, you get a different story, but at Thunder Hill, if you get a red flag, you actually pull off the track and you just wait. You don't finish your lap or anything, because I understand what you're saying. There's definitely a red flag comes out, and some people, I know I slow down way too much at first, and then generally I'm like, okay, no, I got to get going here. Get off the track quick, safely, right? Bring it down to, I think the general rule is about 70%, right? That way, you know, you can make it safe. You're not going to add to the problem, but you're still expediting your trip through. So the ambulance can roll, because they can't roll until the track is clear. But at Thunder Hill, with whatever track day organization we were with, red flag came out, you put your hand up, slow down, pull off track, and wait. And so there wasn't at all come in and then the ambulance can roll. It's just everyone gets off the track and the ambulance goes.
Oh, everybody. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that is interesting.
That's kind of, in my opinion,
that's it
was really strange, especially where I specifically pulled off. There were definitely about a 4-inch gap between the pavement and the dirt. And I'd been watching it all day, out of the corner of my eye.
Yeah.
It was very distracting to finally realize that I had to pull off there. I felt like my front tire was going to get stuck in there, but we were all right in the end.
Yeah, that is bizarre. I mean, for a black flag, that would make sense. So black flag meaning there's something wrong with you, you're doing something, or there's something coming off of your bike. Because we don't, some places use a meatball. It's there's something wrong with you and what you are doing, versus a black flag to say there's something wrong with your bike. That distinction can be helpful. Or some places I think will use the blue flag for that, even though there's differences, right? It's not as standardized as maybe we'd like. And yeah, stopping everybody to just wait seems it would create more inefficiency. So I'm thinking of one track day where it was before a race weekend, and they'd let everybody out all at once versus staging 4 riders at a time.
Oh,
so you get all these people gunning to get their practice time, be I'm gonna get in front of this person, blah blah. And I think for the entirety of the track day we got 10 minutes on track that weren't under a red flag, because they're just perpetual, not a great system, right? But if it had been that system plus the one that you're describing, what a freaking mess.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't like it because there was no way for them to communicate with you when it was okay to go again. Because depending on where you pulled off, you might be
at that point. Yeah.
Well, you talk about a sleeping corner worker. That corner worker's over there okay, I'm tired of holding this thing up, puts it down. You're like, am I going to go or what? And then me being I'm always super worried about all this technical stuff. And I'm I got dirt in my tires. How long have I been sitting here? Are they cold? Does everyone else have dirt on their tires? So I just came in after that, because I was usually red flag, you come in. If it's a minute into your session, you might just stay in the hot pit and hope it, moves on quick. But most of the time you're going to come in, put the warmers on, and that session kind of canceled for you, because that's just the safer bet. So it was definitely weird.
Right. You're I could be hydrating right now, or instead of sitting there baking in the sun, getting further dehydrated, getting more distracted, not thinking about your riding and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Which I guess all that drives home the idea that like we're engaged in this super dangerous pursuit and pastime and sport, but we're actually pretty fixated.
Super dangerous.
We're fixated on safety. this paradox, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was gonna.
Before we get
on
off
that
this
one.
crash topic, what?
Nothing. Honestly,
you were frozen
your
there for a
power outage and internet issues, you're kind of behind. So I feel
I
like
know.
I keep
That's
talking.
why it's a hard time. Yeah, I have a hard time getting anything in here. I'm just leaving. See you guys.
Aw, it'd be sad. Again, I get to have a conversation with your face for the first time. No.
Oh, well, I'm trying to see if I can switch to regular wife
Uh-oh.
right now,
I want to know what we're doing before we get off the crash
so that can be less
topic.
pixelated.
You are less pixelated.
You've been kind of in and out.
Yeah. I feel like he's out now completely, potentially.
Well, he's just laser focused on switching his Wi-Fi over.
Okay. So I don't know as much of your story. I guess I'm supposed to, right? Or do tell.
Well, while we're figuring out this Wi-Fi thing, I don't know. I'm in South Carolina right now. I'm not in Utah, and that's why I don't have power outages. That's a long story.
Do I look better or what? Yes.
And-
No? Do I look better?
Oh, are we talking about the
better.
internet connection? My bad. Internet connection.
Oof.
Sorry.
I haven't been working out or anything, so
How's the
Big-
shoulder, buddy?
it's coming along. I did a push-up yesterday. It was amazing.
One.
Yeah, just one. Just to see if it would
Hey,
still
that-
do one.
That's good.
One clap.
Wow. You got a single clap. Not even a standing clap, just a single clap.
Hey,
That's
that's
a
pretty
little
good.
rough.
So, hey, do you watch Supercross? I know this little turkey Easton doesn't.
Oh my goodness.
I did watch. Yeah, I do. So yeah, why? What you got? Because
Did you see
I'm
the-
happy for
did you see the
Tomac
Aaron
as an old person.
Fortner crash?
Like represent. Yeah,
Sorry, I
The
think I'm
delays
still
were
behind, huh?
right yeah. The crash
Sorry,
last
you root
night.
for Tomac. I root for Tomac. The crash that was last night. Aaron Fortner, yes.
Yes. Yes. So Fortner was leading. We should give people context, right? Like Fortner was leading. He was running away with it, having a great race in a very technical setting in Arlington. And with like a 5-second lead, he biffed it on the whoops, lost his handlebar, and then he
That's
got
a professional
flipped.
term.
Yeah, and landed like it looked like on his back and neck on the concrete, like at high velocity.
Why are they called
I-
whoops?
Because you go, whoops!
Because-
I'm not super crasher.
Because you go, woo!
You think that's
I don't
why?
know.
You don't think it's because they, like, someone was at one point riding down a road and there were a bunch of bumps and he crashed and he's like, whoops.
Maybe there's multiple means. Let's get
I
existential
mean, that's,
here.
I don't. Anyway, sorry.
I'm like, whoopity whoop 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 whoop
Why
whoop.
don't- Why don't you Google it, Easton?
All right. I will actually do that right now. Why are
Answers. It's
whoops,
a burning question. So you brought up this crash.
whoops?
I screamed like a girl.
It was scary. And then when they showed the other angle, it looked even worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The last
when-
lap.
When he went off, I was like, ah! I was scared. I was so scared for him. And then, like you said, when they showed the other angle, it was even worse.
Yeah, and yeah, with his spine kind of crunching and bending in ways it shouldn't. Did you look into it at all today or hear anything further about that?
Mm-hmm. Fractured back.
Apparently, yeah, I think L2, L3, and a scapula were fractured. But apparently he lost a contact at some point during the race. So he was riding with
And
one
that's-
contact.
Like eyeball? So, like, if you had glasses and the glass just fell out of one of them.
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Google that so that I'm not just spewing things. But
I can't Google everything here.
you're doing great.
Google
We're
it.
gonna take everything you say is 100% correct. We'll Google ourselves, and
I appreciate the faith you're placing in me. But yeah, he was running away with that race theoretically without much depth perception, which is really impressive. But yes, his crash was crazy. But I like when you watch Supercross as like a road racer, are you half the time like, this is nuts? Like the pileup that happened in Detroit for the 250 crashes, like the start of their race. There were all these memes going around that were like, if you put this in black and white, it looks like the invasion of Normandy or something, which just looks like a World War II catastrophe. But they didn't red flag it. They keep going. You're like, how is this acceptable? I don't know. The analytical side of me thinks.
Question,
yeah,
real quick question on that. Did you watch Supercross before you started racing?
No.
Okay.
No,
because Cole up here, I believe, has been watching Supercross. Correct me if I'm wrong, but probably for years. I mean, you've got so many years on you at this point that, 50, 60 years he's been watching Supercross here. So, where's I'm just curious. You, this way, started road racing, started watching Supercross, watched Supercross, and then started road racing. Is there a difference in the way you look at it there?
I just started watching Supercross this season.
Okay.
And part of it is that I had a teammate last year who was more into Supercross and motocross, and we had a couple girls that came from that background. So they were always watching on the weekends. Not that we'd all watch, but it like kind of put it in my ear a little bit more. And I think there might have been some motocross race or event in Brainerd that same weekend. It was just like this like motorsports extravaganza. The main reason is my boyfriend's super duper into Supercross. Our like second date was at the LA Coliseum for World Championship Super Duper Motocross. So I'm learning those ways, and like have been going out to Glen Helen and have access to a 2-stroke now, and also like a bunch of the racers have more of a motocross background, and so that's intriguing to me from like a cross training perspective. But yeah, I feel like that was, I don't know, like I de-credentialized myself by saying that, but I don't know. It's cool.
No,
I mean, like,
I don't think so.
Thank you. I appreciate that validation. But it's cool. It's more motorsports, and like how they do the things they do is bonkers. Just like watching like MotoGP is bonkers. And I think the more you get into these things, the more you can kind of appreciate just how wild it is, the skill that some of these humans have. Like, to go back to the corner working thing, we had Josh Harrod out a couple weekends ago, and so I got this like front row view of Josh doing his thing, and a lot of the time that was like, I'm sure painfully slow laps for him, but then when he got let loose, he's like skidding left and right and like sliding out the back end just for and just like to see the control that he has with a bike is mind-blowing. And like there's these riders that are just capable of insane things, and I think that's one of the things that's so cool about the sport is like we're all on the same track, or we all have somewhat the same equipment. Like all the JP-43 Pridmore's coaches, like Andrew Lee and those guys, like they're riding stock Kawasaki's on DOTs, and they're ripping.
Yeah. That have you ever had a 10-year-old pass you on the outside of a corner at a racetrack on a Honda NSR 250?
Lord, like I am so tired of chasing teenagers.
There was just a quick side note. If you ever want to be like humbled and you think you're fast on a motorcycle, go find a racetrack where a 12-year-old races an NSR 250, which is a 250. Those things have probably less than 50 horsepower, most likely. Yeah. And watching that kid, and Cole was there, watching that kid go around the outside of people that looked very, very fast. Not, let alone myself, which is not fast. Insane. Very, very humbling experience watching something like that, because this kid's just full leaned over, knee, elbow, shoulder.
Casual.
I don't know. Everything on the ground.
my
Yeah,
God, I know.
like nothing. He comes back in, and I don't mean to be rude. I really don't. But he could barely walk his own dog when he came back in. You know, he's out walking the dog around the pits, and I was like, dude, you can't even like hold
Yeah.
that dog back, but you're showing everyone up out there on this little 250 like no one's business. So anyway,
Oh, it's wild, right? Like, I go,
If I raise my hand, every time I say something, it's delayed.
sorry.
Sorry, this is really hard for me over here.
should we like stop and restart? Or, I mean, that worked for old school Nintendos.
No, I mean it
I thought old school Nintendos,
it's fine, but just
you pull the game out and like blowing it. Yeah. And then
I already did that.
all right, Cole, go ahead. What do you got?
I forgot now.
Oh man.
Suspense, man.
See, I have to say something, and then I have to wait for you guys to react to it.
You have our undivided attention, sir.
We are listening.
Oh, well, I forgot. So just go ahead, edit that out. I forgot. I'm just...
So anticlimactic. Yes, there's no shortage of opportunities for humility. Because where we were.
Yeah.
Kids ripping
Humility.
around on 250.
Yeah, I don't remember
Jogging
exactly where I
memory
was going
hole.
with that, but anyway, if you own, let me put it this way: if you own a Ducati, and you're not to hit on just Ducati guys, but they tend to be the majority, I guess. I don't know, of these people. I'm digging a hole. Anyway, if you think you're fast and you haven't tried it yet, go to a track day, and you should be humbled very quickly. That's all I was getting at, really.
Yes. And I think that's a good thing, right?
Mhm.
I feel like riding with people who really know what they're doing ups your level, because you're like, I didn't even think this was possible. Like, talking with somebody recently, and we were saying, like, everybody out there inside their helmet thinks that they are breaking the laws of physics. And they might be doing like a 3-minute lap time. But for you in that particular moment, like, you feel like you are breaking the laws of physics until you've had a ton of seat time, I think. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the fun and the thrill and the learning, right? But like, I remember I was out last season. I felt like I was doing pretty good because I was in like I had to be in a track day group where I was in like the racer 2 group, which was slower, and I was on my 400 and I was passing people. So I felt like, okay, I'm running pretty well, right? And I'm like cracking that 2-minute mark, which is respectable,
Right.
on a 400 at Chuckwalla. And then suddenly, like, 4 bikes just come whizzing by me, like I'm just totally standing still. And then I realized one of them's Tony Elias, and I'm like, oh, well, that makes sense. You know? But like, even something like your track entry, like to start a race, and like you have these young gunners, and there's all these, like, you know, last year riding 400s, like junior cup riders who are just out there charging, like right out of the gate, and you think like, oh, hot dang, like, I see already, we haven't even started the race. But you realize, like, no, that's what it is. Like, okay, doing that consistently is like, I don't know, they're getting in the vibe, or like that's where they're comfortable riding, and like, oh, okay, like this is how you get to that next level. Like, I want to see what I can do to emulate that to make it possible. I mean, I think like you see those riders, or for me, like I did a 2-up with Pridmore, my 3rd ever track day. And I thought that I was in a video game, because on the back of his bike, like that was the only thing my brain knew to compare it to. We're going through the bowl, and there's the candy striping, and I just see it like clicking by in my peripheral. And I had the urge, this sounds horrible, but I had the urge to like put my hand out like you do when you're in a boat, like a speedboat, and you want to like touch the water and skim it. Like I nearly started that movement. I was like, nope, this is real life. That's real asphalt. That will hurt. Like, get your head together. Like, this is crazy. And that's when I was like, this is crazy what people can do with motorcycles casually, in his case.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's wild, you know? And I don't know, for me, I think that's so much of like the addiction and the drive, is to be like, he's a human, I'm a human, I don't know how that human does that, because that was really cool.
Right.
And then unfortunately, sometimes you crash on the way there a few times. But I don't know, what sense do you guys make out of this whole pursuit? Like, Cole, you're told like you're taking too much unnecessary risk, and you take some heat for that. You only have one life to live. Everybody's got their time, but like, I'm curious about the why for all this.
So why for me is I'm a huge bucket list guy, honestly. I have been a huge bucket list guy my whole life. I'm getting to be quite an old man at this point, and my bucket emptied out a lot sooner than anticipated. Like I'd done everything. I'd done everything I wanted to do. So now what? You have to learn to start putting things in the bucket. I never anticipated I was going to have to put anything else in the bucket, but this is one of the items I put in the bucket, and I'm currently in a race with myself from an age standpoint to achieve the goals that I want to achieve, that I believe are achievable before I age out of this thing.
That's a good way of putting
Easton,
it.
That's really
he's just a
impressive.
fan
Like,
of
if you feel like
mine.
you've hit the bucket list, like to the point that you're like, well, now what? Like, it makes me curious what else is on the bucket list and how this became the next sets of notches in your belt, I guess.
Is it still my turn?
Yep, still your turn. We're waiting. We're being very polite.
I know you are. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. The bucket list, I mean, Easton knows me good enough to know at this point, but when I say I'm going to do something, I do it. And that's just how you run out of things in the bucket. A lot of people have bucket lists that they never look at again. Mine, if something makes it into the bucket list, then I make a plan to achieve that. And it's like a job, like get the bucket empty. And like I said, in the last 10 years, let's say, I've just really realized I have to keep adding things to it, or I'll start watching soap operas and sitting on a couch.
Eating microwave dinners. I mean, I
you don't
can
strike me as the telenovela type, but
I can attest to that a little bit. I think when 4 years ago, you bought a Ducati Super Sport, drove it across country from Connecticut, and told me, "Hey, I want to come do a track day." And the hardest part about knowing this guy is that he comes and does one track day, and he's like, "Yeah, it was pretty fun." And then a week later, he's got an S1000 and a trailer, and he's down at another racetrack, and he's doing it right. So when Cole throws something in the bucket, that bucket's gonna get emptied. And I mean, I would argue that anyone could do that if they want to. He wants to. That's what he's gonna do. So that would be my my take on it. But anyway, yeah.
I like the psychosocial stuff. Cole was in a car long enough with me to figure that out. But like, I think the why is really cool. And like, one part of that is like that, like, I hear you say that, and that inspires me. Like, that makes me want to push that much more to try. And like, I think that's one of the things that's so cool and attractive about the sport and the community is it's not everywhere in your life that you are really like kind of in the struggle with other people and like seeing people really push to get better and strive to improve themselves or work towards a goal or work their way through certain problems, or sometimes it's like fighting different demons to get there, talking about like having a crash and what's it take to kind of get back on the horse. Like, that can be a very different process for different people and depending on the crashes and whatever else. But it's, to me, like, I think that aspect of it is really cool. And the fact that, like, particularly what I've seen like at CVMA and in our community, I think that you guys also have a really good tight-knit community in Utah. Like, people really want to help each other out in that process. And like, that opportunity to be a part of a community is hard to come by, like, currently in the world.
Yeah.
And to get to pursue
Especially in
things
today's
that, yeah, like to get to pursue things and have tangible goals and markers to strive towards and see the effort people are putting in and see the ways that like you're all kind of struggling together, like, and know that people have your back is really tremendous.
I agree with that. I will say, I think that's kind of, I wouldn't, maybe not half, but a big part of the reason why we've done this podcast, honestly, to meet different people and bring people together all across the country, all across the world, even, because the motorcycle community, which is, if you think about it from a club racer or even a track day goer standpoint, the motorcycle community, sorry, let me get my hands here, is huge. But in the world, the motorcycle community is very small. So when you take those percentages and you break them down, the amount of club racers you have in the world is, to most people, inexistent. Right. And MotoGP is so far off, and World Superbike is so far off. Those are all professionals. They're all getting paid. But there is a group of people in the world that race motorcycles and spend their own money to do it. And that group of people, we all have that one thing in common. So I will say, for me anyway, that's been something like that's so awesome about doing this, getting to meet different people. And we've all got the one thing in common, but hearing everyone's different stories. And, you've only been riding 3 years. I've been riding for, I don't know, 5 or 6. Cole's been riding for, again, 70 or 80. Whatever it might be. But we've all got the one thing in common.
I can't even fight back.
Yeah, sorry. Internet, slow technology. What's your fight?
Well, now that I have the platform, so you mentioned that you've only been doing this for 3 or 4 years, or 4 years, I think you said.
I'm trying to work with you here, buddy.
I know. So there's a common thing that everybody always talks about in our sport. Everybody is always saying that the average lifespan for a rider is that, like 3 years. They come in and they're out. Quite often we're talking to people, especially on this podcast, that it's common for people to say, yeah, I've been doing this for 3 years, 4 years, 2 years. And it's always like on one side, that's amazing. Like, you got this good in, this small handful of years. But on the back of my mind, I always think, yeah, but they might be gone next year. That's the natural progression for a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of on my mind as we were having this conversation too. And like, you're talking about your bucket list, and I think everybody kind of has their set of goals that they may or may not share about what they want to do on a bike. And, it's a privilege to get to even pursue that. But that I just recently heard the 2 or 3 year thing myself, and it makes you wonder, like, I feel like it's easy to understand the reasons why people might leave, like they have a bad crash or family pressure or career pressure, or it's just like financially, like, really challenging, especially if you come in on bigger bikes. It's mentally really hard to keep up with, So I get that, but I mean, I don't know. I guess we're just kind of shooting off the cuff. I don't know if you had a question there or just a posit, but I think that statistic's interesting for sure. And I think it's also hard for people to walk away. That's the other side of it, is you see people that still come back and they volunteer with organizations, or they're the ones that are staffing races, and maybe they're not racing as intensively, but it seems like just a community that's so hard to walk away from.
Yeah, agreed. That family atmosphere you're talking about, people start to get that family atmosphere going. They don't want to walk away from the family. And while I have the floor, I was going to say, back to the bucket list thing. For me, there wasn't a question at the end of that about the time frame of people being in the sport. But for me, going back to that bucket list thing, and I talked earlier about adding things to the bucket. Well, when you go into this, the goal was whatever. And once you achieve that goal, then you have to decide, do you want to go further, put that in the bucket and continue on, or or quit. And I wonder how many people, maybe they get a white number or they compete in a couple races, and once they get to their first crash and it costs them a bunch of money, that's as far as they wanted to go. That filled the bucket for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about it, like clue y'all in a little bit on my mentality. Like, I'm clear on kind of where I started, and I feel really lucky that there's been this combination of factors that's gotten me to where I am right now. And a lot of that is having support from people and folks that literally helped me with the bike and coached and all those kind of great things. But like, we know now that Build Train Race is going to be a 2-year program. I should spend a little more time talking about that. But it's going to be a 2-year program. So I'm coming back as a veteran. This is my 2nd year, and I know that there's no 3rd year ahead for me. So presumably this is it's my last year with the team. It's my last year with this kind of a ride to Moto America. From a team support perspective, Royal Enfield is phenomenal. I mean, they give us the bike, they set up a ton of sponsors for us. They pay for our travel, they transport the bike, they basically cover all of our consumables and costs when we're there at the track. Like, that is a phenomenal level of support, and something that so many professional racers dream of. I mean, it's a factory ride, like incredible. Right. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with this? What do I want to do with this moving ahead? And this is kind of your point, Cole. Like, I'm figuring that out to a degree. Do I want to get a ride into Moto America? Like, yeah, that would be amazing. But realistically, it doesn't happen for very many people. There's not a ton of money in the paddock, and really talented racers that have been doing this a long time and have a ton of connections, they aren't getting that. I mean, like, look at Michaela Moore, like, who's, she's undefeated champion of our class. She's a phenomenal rider. She's now 20, but she was 19 years old. So speaking of like chasing teenagers around the track and being humbled, like, she's a girl that grew up riding bikes. This is what she does. It's her passion. I mean, like, she should be winning. Like, she's been on a bike since she was 2 years old. Like, when she got in trouble, she'd go do drills and all this other stuff. Like, she's a phenomenal rider. She knows so much about motorcycles. She works in a shop day in and day out. Like, this is what she lives and does and breathes. And she couldn't get a ride, which I think is a shame that there aren't more people stepping up to support riders like her, or like Sonia Lloyd, who is the other like really talented young rider from our group. And Sonia will be riding in twins this year, which, like, I am so stoked to see her do that, because I think she's a really strong competitor in her own right. Like, there just aren't a ton of opportunities. So I guess maybe this is partially a call if you have any listeners who are like, I'd like to fund a race team. Like, please, like, create those opportunities for people. But yeah, like, so much of what's special too about being a part of the Build Train Race program is realizing how much bigger it is than us as like individual riders. I haven't raced on every team, so I don't know how much that's a factor, but it's such a different product within the Moto America offering and within the Moto America paddock that it attracts a different kind of support, and it connects to different people. I mean, like, women is the obvious thing, but also like people who've been racing forever, or been around motorcycles a long time, because the bikes are more relatable from a vintage perspective. But like, yeah, where does it go from here? That's not always an easy thing to ask if, you're not necessarily chasing like a certain lap time or championship trophy. It has to be a bigger thing. That goes back to the why question.
Right. Well, so speaking of that, I mean, 3 years, Build Train Race, where we talked about Thailand and everything else, where, as far as racing anyway, where's the start for you? What got you to racing and down that path?
Yeah. I mean, like, I literally like got my license Valentine's Day of 21. And then like a month later, bought my first bike. I thought that there was a problem with that bike, and it was a lemon. And so then I went out and I found another bike. And then by that fall,
That's how it
I was on the track. Right. Yeah, totally. I was riding a BMW R9T, and was in with a group of riders who were pretty fast, and some former racers and people who were like track day regulars. And they always like advocated for me to come to the track, and I had a feeling I'd really like it. I was trying different disciplines. Like I did some dirt biking. I did like the mini biking thing. I went and I did a police officer like drills just to like sample the world and figure out what I liked in motorcycles. But I had a feeling I'd want the speed thing, but it's a big step, right? To figure that out. But I was riding my R9T on track for, I started in October that fall. So I've been 21. Yeah. I got my race license in April because I don't totally know what it is, but I've gotten seat time, but I've just had a really quick learning curve, and it's been really fun to be on that learning curve. And so racing just became the next thing. And so I've kind of been doing motorcycles from like, well, this is the next thing. Like, this is what's in front of me. And that stems from when I first started being like, oh, I really love this. Like, this connects so many pieces for me and checks so many boxes for me. And I've been wanting to do this for more than half my life. And I'm finding it so fulfilling, like even more beyond what I could have imagined. If I want to keep doing this, I need to be good at it. If I want to be good at it, I need to train at it. And that just kept kind of leading to one door opening to another door opening. And like being a part of Build Train Race is phenomenal, like kind of beyond my wildest dreams. Like I've been to one Moto America event and was just totally like smitten and had the feeling of like, I want to be in this paddock. I don't know what it takes, but like, I want to know what it is to like race in this paddock and be a part of this. And so like, I feel so grateful to be a part of this, especially when it has more meaning. But yeah, I've been riding this trajectory, I guess, to answer your question. Like racing became the next thing, and then another door was in front of me and kept walking through them.
Kept climbing the stairs. Okay.
It's really fun. I really like going fast. So that too.
That might be the best quote I think I've ever heard. It's really fun. I like going fast. I mean, it's simple, but it just what more is there to say? You have the floor. That's all you.
I wasn't raising my hands this time. I was
Oh,
Will Ferrell?
saying what
To do with my hands?
Will Ferrell. He said, I don't know what to do with my hands. Easton doesn't get it.
sorry.
Thank you for getting that, though. Easton, because of these technical difficulties, I'm so excited to hear. Ask her the right questions, would you? Ask her. I want to know what's it like in that paddock with them girls. How is it setting up that trailer and tearing that trailer down every week? How many races you got this year? 4 races?
What is Build Train Race?
Go, Easton. Go.
Sorry, I've been asking the wrong questions over here.
Apparently. I mean,
but yeah,
chat.
I mean, speak to us about.
Yeah. So, Build Train Race is a unique offering in Moto America paddock. It's 12 women that all ride Royal Enfield Continental GT 650s. So it's technically a 650cc bike. That's a twin with about 42 horsepower. It's a classic. Yeah. It's a classic cafe racer style bike. Royal Enfield is really good at making these workhorse type bikes. I compare it a little bit to like a VW Bug, where like those things have been in production for decades and decades and decades, and it's been transformed to different platforms. If you're getting the impression that it's not really a race bike, you would be correct.
Okay.
But Enfield is the longest, I gotta say this right, longest producing manufacturer of motorcycles in the world. So they've been continuously producing motorcycles longer than any other make. I think this is like, they make almost 1 million bikes a year. There's a lot of Enfields out there, but they're all over the world, and they're not really saturated in North America. Right. Based out of India. And like when I make the VW comparison, that's because that car was produced for so long and people can work on it, and it's used in lots of different platforms. So this is the 4th season of Build Train Race that we're going to be embarking upon. It's undergone a lot of changes. Since it started, it was originally conceived of as a program to get women who had road experience but no major track and no race experience onto a racetrack. You give them a bike, and it used to be that like a bike box would show up at your doorstep, and women were kind of released to figure out how do you turn that into a race bike. Turns out that's really challenging when you're trying to make a race bike out of a bike that's not really a race bike, because, you know, if you take a Ninja 400 or an S1000RR and turn it into a bike, you got a million and one parts. There's tons of knowledge about how you do that. You have so many different shops you can go to, some people whose brains you can pick, but this bike is really like, we're doing the R&D on these bikes. So you get the bike, you build the bike, you turn it into a race bike as much as you can with suspension and removing tons of parts and trying to make it lighter and getting quick shifters on the things and all that good stuff. And then train. I used to be with Melissa Paris, who started the first 2 years, like working with women on track, teaching them those skills. Now we are super lucky to have Freddie Spencer and essentially like the champ school coaches who will work with us. Last year we were selected, so there's, out of step here, but there's an application process. It's both like you create a video and write an application and then get interviewed and selected for the team. So after we got selected, we went to Texas, we did a build with a couple mechanics to support us, and then immediately went to the track and we're riding, and got to train with Freddie Spencer. And then we did 4 rounds of Moto America. So
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So literally, I mean, the name Build, Train, and Race
it's
is
very literal.
okay. I didn't realize that. I thought it was like build the mentality. I didn't realize you guys are out there attempting and building race bikes. And out of, I mean, what you said about the fact that I've never had a Royal Enfield. I know one person that owns one, and I don't think he could tell you the first thing about, not to offend the guy at all, but the first thing about making it into a track-worthy motorcycle, so that it is impressive. Cole?
Yeah, it's kind of funny is we got together with our team last year in Texas, and we're all introducing ourselves, and one girl, Holly, who's so sweet and is like 3rd generation motorcyclist, maybe even 4th out of New London, she's Canadian. She's like, I'm so excited to work on a modern bike, because her background is like 1960s Yamahas, and we're all kind of chuckling. It's like, oh, Holly, this is not, like electronic suspensions and the throttle adjustment and all of like the technology of like auto blippers and slipper clutches. Like, we do not have that.
Right.
We barely have a gas gauge. Like, there's no gas cap that's like a racer gas cap that we could use either. Like, it doesn't exist. Like, we still have a key on the bike for that. So
is there, I guess on the build side, is there like limits? You mentioned taking weight off and just taking parts off to reduce weight. Are there limits on any of that? Or
I mean, it's supposed to be a spec class more or less. So like, we're literally in a bike shop and we had all 6 of our bikes lined up side by side, and so we're going through the same steps in terms of like removing headlights and extra wiring and cutting down the subframe and swapping out the seats. There aren't a ton of parts that are available, so there wasn't a lot that could be done, but there was some variability to different riders' builds.
Okay.
We have a rule book now. It was just a little bit ambiguous last year. We're not supposed to crack the engine open, though. Like, that is a hard and fast rule.
So half of you're doing your 2nd year. So
yeah.
Half of you're doing your 2nd year, and then half of them are new. You already built a bike last year. You're using the same bike. So what do you do in that time while do you help them, or?
They already did their build. So that happened earlier this month. So I should say, like, the program shifted a little bit. The first 2 years were under one person's direction, Bree, and she gets credit with basically starting the program. She worked for Royal Enfield, but then it wasn't very clear, and I was getting a lot of feedback from people that it wasn't happening in the 3rd year. So a lot of what my experience was as a first-year rider was because they were throwing it together pretty quickly. Like, applications open, ironically, on Valentine's Day, 23, sorry. And then we were in Texas like the first weekend of April with the bikes. And yeah, it was a new team manager. They brought Freddie Spencer on, all the mechanics pretty much new to the bike as well. So there was a lot of kind of building the airplane while we were already flying it. And this year, I think the newer women have the benefit of more of that institutional knowledge, to where it's more understood what updates are necessary for the bike. Like, there's been some chronic transmission issues, and they got ahead of that for their build. We didn't really have a front end until Megan, who works for Olin's and provides a lot of on track or like trackside support at Moto America. She took it as her kind of personal project to figure out how to retrofit an R3 front end, like suspension canister that would fit into the Olin's, or not into the Olin's, sorry, into our stock parts. So like, we didn't really have a front end for a while, or we had very minimal like sophistication with that front end. So like, this year's build, they have a lot more benefit, and I'm hoping that it's a lot smoother for them and there's less that's ambiguous for them. But they went by themselves down and built the bikes. Myself and the returners will be going down like the middle of March, and we'll have about a 3-day build like update process. I'm not totally clear what that looks like and what projects we're going to be doing. I mean, like maintenance and swapping out the chain and kind of doing those like, let's start the new season things. But beyond that, I don't know. I think maybe we're doing like a new D10 spring or shifting star or something like that. So there will be some additional projects on top of that. And that's work that we do, which, by the way, like, not a mechanic. And mechanics usually take like years to decades to build up their skills. So
Yeah, I believe that.
Fair enough. So they're doing 4 tracks this year. I seen the Ridge is one of them. What are the other 3?
Yep. Our season opener will be at Barber. So Alabama is the official start to our season at the middle of May, I believe. And then we have Road America, which is a return for us, and then the Ridge. And then we're going to be one of the other classes that's going to Mid-Ohio for the first time with Moto America.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of the ladies have ridden at Barber because Arma had their big like 100-year celebration, I believe, last year. And they let the Royal Enfields in.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of ladies rode and raced there already. I haven't ridden it yet. But that should be I'm looking forward to it. I really like technical tracks. I like elevation. It should be cool. And the Ridge is like, for me, that was the most fun last year.
The Ridge is sweet that way. So I'm going to ask you a question we asked Lugnut last week, and I'm kind of curious about going to Barber for the first time. Does the program offer like the build and train and race? You as a racer going to a new track for the first time, how do you prepare for that? And does the program of build, train, race kind of offer up any solutions to this your first time at this track?
Yeah. Good question. You know, it's definitely hard going into new tracks. And obviously all of those tracks last year were new for me. And I think different riders prepare with their own kind of system and style. That's one of the things I really loved last year. And one of the things that I said, I'm going to learn how to ride new tracks and like reduce that learning curve as much as I can. So for me, it's a process of finding onboard footage, trying to talk to people that have ridden the track and have more intimate knowledge of it. So like for the Ridge last year, I knew some riders from CVMA who ride up there, and it's kind of their home track, and spent some time on the phone with them after I'd watched some onboard footage and had track maps and was drawing it out. So I was drawing out the track and like, what are my visual markers? And okay, there's this patch of concrete to look for, and you want to get your braking done between here and here, and really trying to think through each lap and what you're going to be looking for, so that when you get there, it's not new. One of the ways I describe it is going from like a 2-dimensional to a 3-dimensional. And the faster you can get your brain thinking in 3 dimensions as a rider, I think the faster it is to assimilate to a track. And like kind of that point, like I think P1 and P2, like our first 2 sessions on track, I had the fastest or the second fastest time. So I learned the track quickly, but it's harder to like make the further gains in terms of time. So like I would love to do a track day in advance at Barber. I was able to do that for Road America, which also really helped because coming from the West Coast, the time change is really challenging too. so I was able to fly out because I have lived in Wisconsin. Was able to fly out early, join some friends there, and do a track day like the Monday before Road America. So I'd done that track prep, but then I was also able to have my own experience on track, which helped with that learning. For Barber, I'll probably look for like a racing sim.
Okay.
And try to get a sense of like what are the elevations and the markers, and I might try to get some days at other tracks that have more like blind turns just to develop more comfort with that. And then for me also, I've been racing an R7 this year at CVMA and CRA. Like that's what I plan to race. That's my bike moving forward, but I'm probably going to switch back to riding the 400 a little bit more because it's a lot more of a momentum bike, just to have something that's more analogous to the Enfield.
Sweet. So it sounds like as far as the training and preparing for new tracks, that's pretty much up to the individual to figure out how they want to go about that. Okay.
Yeah. I guess that was a really long answer to a short question, but
all good. The stories are good.
They
That's why we're
teach you. Yeah, they kind of teach you like some principles of how to apply that on track, and like learning how to evaluate a track, like what's an entry style corner, what's an exit style corner, what are kind of your biggest priorities on track that like you really want to nail this particular turn so that you're set up for like a big drive. So you're learning an analytical process for how to analyze a track map.
okay.
And then I think each person has a different approach from there.
That makes sense. Okay.
No, it's my turn.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to gauge the delay. I think it's about 2.5 seconds. Yeah, you
Right.
racing the next Chuck Waller round then? You missed the one round I went to.
I know. I was very bummed about that. That means I also missed Ari Henning on a scooter. That was the other big news of that weekend.
I'm in the video.
What do you mean? Oh, his video, his 40-minute.
I was in the writers meeting, and then they kept driving past where I was pitted with Anthony.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I was chatting with the guy who was on the Pan America. If you saw that part of the pass, he has a literal turkey pan as his. Like,
Is that where that comes from? I've heard that phrase before.
Turkey pan?
Yeah, as your under belly pan. Anyway.
Belly pan, yeah. Maybe. I don't know if they just didn't make one for his bike, or he just didn't buy it, or crashed, or what. Or if it was just meant to be a Thanksgiving special that carried on in perpetuity. But the gentleman has had a literal turkey pan, just like strapped to the bottom of his Harley.
Well, hey, if it works, it works.
Nice.
You know, there's room for all kinds of different style out there. Whatever it takes.
Absolutely.
Fast tech.
I don't see why I wouldn't. Honestly, I don't. I mean, if it's gonna collect the fluids, which is its only job, then why would it not?
Saying we got style out of Chuck Waller. But no, I was really sad to miss you guys. I mean, I just learned that you were there too, but we could have met and hung out. Would have been lovely.
Well,
but yeah, what do you think? Oh, you weren't there. Oh, okay. Yeah.
He wasn't there.
Well, what do you think though, after finally getting to make it out, hearing about Chuck Waller and lug stories and all that jazz?
So to be completely fair, I had done a track day a year prior or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't my first time there. But what I was really excited to see, and what everybody at Chuck Wall is always talking about, is the level of talent in throughout all the classes.
Yeah.
That was interesting to see firsthand. Definitely a lot of fast people out there.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I would have had one more day.
Did you get to ride, or you were there for the Apex Assassins Day and then watch the races?
I was there for 4 days actually. I did the track day with Dale on Thursday,
Nice.
and then regular track day on Friday, and 2 days of racing.
Cool. And that weekend was clockwise, correct?
Yes.
Did it meet your expectations?
Which way do you like?
As far as like the level? Which way do I like? They say that you typically like the way that you ride first, and I am probably guilty of that, which would put me in the counterclockwise group. That said, I really like turns 1 and 2 going clockwise. There's certain turns that I prefer one way or the other.
Right.
I can't remember which way I liked better. I have also ridden it, but it was years ago. I just remember specifically the bowl was like my main point of like reference for which way I liked better. And I want to say counterclockwise. I like the entrance and exit of the bowl better that direction. But
Yeah,
I also think that's the one I did first. So
yeah. So that would mean that you're doing the bowl going to the left. And yeah, it's more sustained time on the throttle versus going from the right where you're preparing for more braking.
yeah.
And also there's like a bit of a lip on the exit going to the right that isn't really tricky, but it mentally can like get in your head a little bit. That's really dialing into like track dynamics, right? But
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard a lot about Utah and your racing out there. The track, it's kind of this question mark in terms of like whether you guys still have that available because like there was an ownership change or something or
Oh no.
oh no.
We're good. We're good
Okay.
out there. We're good. The track got bought by some other owners years ago. And then that's what brought up some of those questions and people not knowing what's really going on with it. But last year we had a problem with air fence and they were only allowing us to race the west side, the west configuration. But that should be all taken care of. We're going to 2-day racing next year.
Awesome.
And come up and see how we live.
I would love to. I mean, I think maybe that's the what's next for one thing is, you know, you take the pressure off of having to do Moto America and I can just go tour around and visit new tracks and see different organizations and enjoy it, right? I mean, not that it's not enjoyable now, but there is a difference of feeling like you're on the big stage and have to perform versus like, yeah, seeing your organization and what y'all are about. What I've heard is that you guys will pick people out of the canyons to get more racers, which I think is really cool from like a gritty, like, I don't know, hooligan style way of getting people to race.
Yeah, I haven't personally done that, but I know that there's some groups down there that
You said out of the canyons?
That's what I heard.
Weird. I don't know anything about that. I'm in South Carolina, so I don't know anything about USBA and what they're doing to recruit, but that's pretty cool. That would be news to me.
I mean, I feel like that would be weird at first, but then super flattering if someone's like, hey, you look like you know what you're doing. Come test your skills. Maybe try to go really fast with less risk of dying. Let's get you a track that doesn't have like as much dirt and rocks and cars on it.
And deer and I will say that the biggest thing I think that the USBA has going for them is their street GP class, which is you show up as a dude with a street legal bike and they help you track prep it, and all you have to do is bring the bike and the gear, go through a series of classes, and then you go do a race at the end of the day. So you're doing a track day with an actual race at the end of the day, and that's on a race weekend. So
that would be rad.
I think it's pretty unique. I think it offers a lot quicker entry, if you will, to club racing. Whereas I think generally people go do track days and then someone's like, hey man, you should race. In Utah, you're able to show up in a race. That could be your first track day. In fact, a lot of the people that I met while I was there were doing that, and it was their first track day. They'd never done an Apex Assassins track day. They just showed up for that, and they wanted to race. So
that's pretty wild. I mean, that is cool, and I can see how that translates, and it cuts out a middleman in a way. Because when you're out riding with your buddies, there's inherent competitiveness to that anyhow. So, like, hey, let's see who's got the stuff. So do you ride at the Dragon Tail? Are you close enough to get up there?
I haven't. Not yet. Not yet.
I mean, so I used to ride canyons more. Like that's what I was doing before I started riding track, and that was like the crew that I was riding with all of us with our boxer engines, like doing Malibu hills and canyons and stuff. But now, like, I feel like I'm a pansy when I get back on the street. Like, I've totally become that rider who's converted to the track. And I mean, like, I was commuting on my motorcycle like day in and day out for a while too, and I barely even knew that anymore. But like something like riding there, it's such an iconic spot. I've driven it, but I think about riding it and like I just think of like, okay, there's like little waterfalls on the side of the road, and then there's like this one area that never gets sun, and so it's just like a moss pit over like the edge of it, and there's no shoulder, and the pavement's weird. Like there's places where it's super uneven, and I'm just like, I don't know that I could get enjoyment out of that because I would not want to charge it now.
Yeah, I definitely plan on doing Deals Gap before I leave here. But I, much like you, started going to the racetrack and have seen my motorcycles actually probably get less total ride time in a year.
Oh, for sure.
Because of it. More enjoyable ride time total, in my opinion, but definitely not on the street anywhere near as much as I used to be.
So here's a fun like parlor game I like to play with people. When you get a bunch of motorcyclists together, as you say, how many bikes do you think we have between us? Ooh. Like you guys probably know how many bikes each other has or has a rough idea. And we're talking built to mostly built bikes, right? Like something's out in the shop, that doesn't really count, but we're not talking like, you have this many engines and boxes and the intention to build XYZ bikes. So between the three of us, how many bikes would there be?
17.
I'm going 15.
Oof, low.
I'll split the difference, 60.
All right.
How many you got? And I'll tell you the answer.
I had to think about it because the infield is in Texas. I have my 400 race bike is at Chuck. And in my garage are 4 motorcycles. So I'm at 6.
Wow, I might have been low.
So got
6?
2 road bikes, my R7, and then the 2-stroke Yamaha.
Okay, so you're at 6 total.
Yeah.
I've got 2 Gixxers in my garage and a Harley. I don't know if you can count the kind of Grom.
Yep. I used to have a TTR. So that would count.
I might be able to count a few more in there, but we'll just leave it at that.
Wait,
that's 11.
You could your number just based on trying to be right on your guess.
I mean, I'll be even more under. I don't. My buddy's ZX6R is sitting in my garage right now. If you want to count that, I've got a little Pee-wee 50 in the garage. That's very technically a motorcycle. As far as projects go, there's definitely one that's sitting in boxes, so I didn't count that one.
Yeah, we'll count the Pee-wee then, but not your buddy's bike. This is getting into the fine print, but
okay, so that makes 6 total in my garage. So that's 12 plus whatever he's got, which is definitely more than. Yesterday it would have been less, but now it's more.
Oh, you're a baby.
Today we're back up. No, just took one out of the boxes.
Yeah, the boxes are in the garbage. The bike is back together, so it counts now.
So I race a vintage class here at USBA, and last year I had a bike blow up, so I didn't want to lose the championship there, the championship contention for the class. So I ran out and bought another one, hurried through my race parts on it just to finish out the year. And now I'm putting together the original one so that I can put the one I bought last year back together so that I can sell it to someone. So yeah, I have 3 S1000 sitting in the shop right now.
Oof. Oof. 3 bikes in the shop, you said, or like that's the shop is your garage?
No, the shop's my shop.
Okay. Because when I say I have a bike in the shop, that's a bad thing. That means someone did an oopsies.
Yeah.
But that's just where
Yeah,
your bikes get to live.
mine.
And I call it the nursery, for the record, where the bikes live.
That's fair.
So we got to how many bikes total?
I think there should be 10. There's
For you personally?
3 S1000s,
2 Harleys,
2
a
Harleys.
Honda,
There's a Ducati.
a Husqvarna, another Husqvarna, and a Ducati. That's 9. That's what I'm getting. Did I miss one?
Well, I get to count my pit bike if you get to count yours.
Oh, boom. There's number 10.
22?
Yeah. Wow, that was quick math. Yeah.
I encourage you to play this game with all of your friends at
I
other
don't know if I
moto
want.
gatherings.
I don't know if I want to, but that's a good game.
You can learn so much about people, though. Like, what? You have an SV sitting in your garage? How long have you had that thing? When are you going to bring that out? You know?
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's good. I enjoyed that. It's good. I don't enjoy when actually I sold a car recently and the person came over. They live right across the street and they come over and I had my garage open and they're sitting there like, it is 7. I was like, whoa, what are we like? Apparently to all the neighbors, it's just a question of how many 2-wheeled vehicles are actually in that garage. So
Yeah.
anyway,
The fun for me is like, I was worried you guys were going to ask me about my hobbies, and I was going to be like, does rearranging the garage count as a hobby? Because I feel like I'm just like endlessly doing that because I live in an urban area and I have a garage built for like a Model T. So it's literally about as wide as my wingspan. So all the bikes have to come out anytime we're working on stuff, and the neighbors go by and now they go, now which ones are yours and which ones are these all your boyfriends? And I'm like, no, these are mine. People will see the bike on the back of the car and just automatically start talking to him about stuff, and we get to play games with that.
Freaking men, you know what? They're terrible.
My God, I know, right? I mean, the addendum to like really fun, and I like to go fast is it is also fun to beat the boys, and it just really is. It's just fun to beat people because it's mostly dudes out there.
I like to beat people.
Yeah, but just like any other racer, you know, like you want to finish ahead of people, and if you see someone ahead of you, you want to go after them. That's really all it comes down to. And you know, you kind of you asked a question about what's it like to be in the pit, and I think anytime if you took 12 riders and put them under the same tent, like you're gonna have a lot of personalities, and some days people get along better than others, and I don't think it's really any different from that. But I do think there's reasons why most teams don't have 12 riders under the same tent. It's a lot of logistics and personalities.
Yeah.
But that said, I mean, I think
most big pro teams can.
I don't know, like most pro teams can't feel that many. Like Tytler's has one of the larger teams out there, and I think they'll have 4 to 6 riders depending on the weekend. That's still a lot. And you think of all the staff that goes along with supporting them, both from like a technical standpoint as well as just like a management and a flight direction sort of component to it. It's a lot of moving parts. Obviously that's like different classes, but no, I think we have a lot of amazing humans under our tent. I think Scott, our manager, who you guys know, I think Scott Rybark.
sorry.
He has handed Utah racing for a while. That's why I say that. But like he, you know, and Freddie too, like they're the main people doing the selection, and they pick really high quality people. People that want to be there, people that want to be a part of something like this, that, you know, you're not just all the way in it for your own gain. There's kind of a bigger picture component to it. You know, so we have like kids coming around our tent all the time, and parents bringing their kids around, and that's really special. That kind of interaction is really different, I think, from other tents, and also we have like really talented people in our tent in their own right. Last year when we started looking around like at the career backgrounds of people, I think 2 or 3 people worked in a shop. We had 2 PhDs, 2 nurses, an industrial designer, myself with a doctorate, an engineer, and is that 12 people? Like, we have really talented people. Some of the women that we brought in this year, there's another veterinarian, which is kind of wild. Former professional skier, a woman who works at a high level at Amazon and does a lot of their logistics. I think some additional engineers on top of that too. So like women who've really proven themselves in a lot of other areas too. And like, if you were to ask me, like, one thing I wish would go different is that would get delved into a little bit more from our program, because it's people who are really dedicated to the sport and pursuing this at a high level, but that also have all of these other pursuits and have a very different backstory than so many racers at that paddock.
To carry on that, I don't think there's really an argument. Definitely a male-dominated sport, right?
Right.
So getting to speak to a female that's not only riding and doing track days and racing, but racing with Moto America in this program is, one, something special, but two, what is your take on that? Is that helping the sport? Is it helping other women? Kind of like, where's the future for that, and expand, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's a short answer to that, right? There's a lot of nuances to it. And, there's riders like Kayla Jakob, who's absolutely incredible in her own right. She is a hell of a competitor, and she's shown that time and time again, jumping from one bike to another, going over to Europe and being pretty dominant for the most part. Very capable, right?
Mm-hmm.
I know Kayla's given interviews where she's not as much a fan of that, of having female specific. Like, I think this is an interview about what Kayla said, but she just speaks to the perspective of like, we're racers, we want to race. That's something that I love. When you put on a suit and a helmet, it doesn't really matter. You're just going after the next person. And yeah, we say dude usually, because that's a pretty safe assumption. But that it is a very equal proving ground. There's nothing that's really differentiating us when we're out on track. So the fact that there's a women specific class, like, on the one hand, that feels a little awkward, especially because, the equipment that we're racing isn't as technologically up to date. And I don't think there's anywhere else, with the exception of a few privateers, where the racer is doing most of their own work as well. So that's another kind of component of, or I guess layer of effort and sort of like mental redirection.
Right.
But that said, I think Harleys also weren't necessarily like built to race at a really high level. They just happen to have a tremendous amount of support and finance behind them, that allows them to really maximize that platform. It makes me curious what this bike could do with that degree of support. I mean, it's an insane amount of support for that financially to have. Like, you talk to Chloe Laren or someone at Harley Davidson, and like the knowledge that goes into those bikes and how they maximize them is just insane. And also, like, talking to Kyle, like, what he can do with that bike is wild. He also knows that brand so intimately. All of the Wyman brothers do. So I think in some ways, like, we're still very new with what this bike can do and what this class can do, but it's accessing a different kind of consumer and enthusiast that doesn't otherwise feel like they have a place in the sport, or doesn't feel like there's an outlet that's affirming for them. I mean, I know for a fact, the fact that we're there racing, like, is more meaningful to a certain group of people that are watching it. I mean, I could talk about like the girls that would come up and we're just so excited to see women in leathers and women racing around the track. I think we all just want to race and be our best at what we're doing, kind of all your point about the bucket list. But it's amazing to get to be a part of this, particularly because it extends so far beyond just what we're doing, because there is much more of like an inspirational component to it. And it's cliche at this point, but the representation matters. I think it'd be awesome if we could open up to more ladies. Like, if you have a bike, come out and race it, or like, it's doing something different where otherwise we wouldn't be able to have this kind of a platform, training experience. And the point of you guys invited me on here, and I really appreciate that. And it's great to see the program getting more interest and support and followers, and people realizing like, okay, it's definitely not a super bike. But to ride this bike well, you have to be able to ride it really well. It's not
Right.
going to give you very much. And that's one thing that like, I think we came a long way last year in our class of showing like it can be competitive, and this bike, you know, has talented riders. We're not literally straight off the streets. We have race experience, we have acumen, we have talent. We're working hard at this. Our times are about 10 seconds off of junior cup riders. I think that's really impressive given that we're working with less horsepower than them and a heavier bike than them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, you know,
So on the other hand, though, I mean, you raced down at CVMA, CRA. Have you seen the experience with BTR translate back and add some value just on a standard club racing level for you?
yeah, I'd say for sure. I mean, there's always the benefit of seat time, right? And going to other tracks, and CVMA doesn't run through the summer, and so I'm getting to race through the summer. But no, like I noticed the difference when I got out there just in terms of like racecraft and thinking about it, as well as like my knowledge of the bike and how I solve problems. Like it absolutely was an amazing education from that standpoint. And yeah, like I actually was able to get out there with my Royal Enfield last round, 2 rounds ago, when we got rained out, and I was going to get to race in like the American Thunder class, but I rode Formula 2, and like, man, I'm pushing that bike as hard as I can to get to like a 207. But, you know, I'm beating R7s on a bike that's significantly less horsepower and weight and not quite as nimble. So, like, for me in particular, it's taught me how to be a lot smarter about a lot of nuances about racing, because I can't rely on power. The weight to power ratio on that bike is really challenging. I feel like a squeaky wheel about this, and I'm not trying to like play a tiny violin, but Cole, you met me. I am not a petite lady. I'm like 5'11". And so I just like inherently have to ride at a high level to compete with people that weigh significantly less than me. So learning how to do that's kind of like the small bike training thing too. Like anyone can do this, right? But like maintaining rolling momentum and learning how to maximize corners, learning how to read a track, learning how to read your competition and figure out when to make a move. All of those things absolutely do translate, as well as just a piece of like relating to other racers, because like we spend a lot of time talking to people too in the Moto American paddock, and that part's cool as well. So yeah, it does translate for sure.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I think
it is.
Cole
Awesome.
might have had something, maybe. Or did you lose it again?
you keep saying that, but I've given up because I think my delay has grown. I don't know why.
Well, I can say that I might have run out of questions for you. I could talk about motorcycles with you all night, but I do also have a job. So before we wrap this up, is there any shout outs you'd like to give to anyone that's maybe helped you along the way, or just anything like that? And then two, any tips? I don't think we have a whole lot of female listeners, but I think it's a rare and special occasion to get someone that's been through that program and that has continued racing. Any tips for someone that might be on that path or trying to go down that path, I guess?
Ooh, that becomes a big topic. That could be like a whole other segment of conversation. I mean, I will say first, like, thank you for thinking of me and inviting me out and giving some attention to our program and what we're doing and Build Train Race. Like, yeah, like what am I wearing tonight? Gonna rep the program. Tremendous, and we have some great sponsors from them too. They're kind of too numerous to mention, but Arai, Parts Unlimited, Royal Enfield North America, Royal Enfield in general obviously comes to mind. Champ School supports us too. They're not an official sponsor, but that's where we do a lot of our coaching. So shout out to all of those guys. Yeah, it's a long list. K-Tech, like I could go on with them. Long Beach BMW helped me out to get my start. So Jeff, who you guys met, is someone who from the beginning was like, you want to get to the track, come out to the track. And I think that kind of segues a little bit to how to help women. I'd like to also speak to your male listeners and say, like, be open to women being legitimate in this sport, and be open to them wanting to be competitors and get out there. And you haven't known everything your whole life about this, and neither has everybody. And some women have known a lot, like, their whole lives and have been around motorcycles. So I think that there's room for creating more space for women at some times, but also for women to just pursue the parts of this that resonate for them, and to find the people that are encouraging to them, because I think our paths as women into motorcycles is going to be very different and very unique, and also very individually driven. And people love to give us advice along the way that may be very well intentioned, but not necessarily good advice. And so I think just riding motorcycles, speaking as a woman, is this amazing tool for harnessing your instincts and also helping you see, like, your capabilities. And so if women can lean into that, I think that they will find that more paths open to them. And they have every right to be on a racetrack or a track and defending what they know and figuring out how to go faster and have fun and beat the boys.
Hell yeah. Awesome. I love it. Oh, I love it.
Daughters, what do you want them to hear? What would you like? What do you think would be important for them? Like, they see you riding all the time. Do you want them to ride? Do you get them on the Pee-wee bike and let them charge? I don't know. Do you have to?
Yeah, I do actually. And she's got a little electric bike that rips around at 9 miles an hour, and she probably rides it better than I could. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's awesome. I think the racetrack is for everyone. I can say that personally, I agree with Kayla Yakov. I don't think there should be a separation. I don't know if there needs to be. But to your point, I liked your comment of they get a lot of advice along the way, because I definitely have seen that in many different, and not just our hobby, in every hobby.
Sure.
But yeah, it's awesome to hear that programs like this exist, and that I don't even know exactly where I was going with that, but yeah, it's possible. There's nothing stopping you. I don't know. I've passed women riders on the track plenty of times. Also been passed by a woman who's been racing motorcycles for a long time on an R6 in turn 6 at the Ridge. And that humility thing comes into effect, and you're just like, it ain't about who you are or what you are, it's just what you do. And so nothing else really matters.
Yeah. I mean, I would love for there to not be a need for women specific classes, but I would say even for myself, like it's great that FIM now has a women's class, a women's championship. That's going to be fun to watch. Bringing together talent from around the world, like, to let them duke it out. Hell yeah. Phenomenal. And that's just going to elevate the sport in ways that it hasn't appealed before. I mean, I definitely had an anti-sport bike bias for a lot of my life, and
FIM created a women's women's class with the R7, and they're going to get to ride tracks around Europe. How amazing. Like, women from around the world who are legitimate racers already are going to get to duke it out. And, like, that makes me feel like, oh yeah, there's another step. Like, BTR shouldn't be the pinnacle here, right? Like, it should be creating more opportunities. And so now to see, like, Mallory Dobbs would be another great racer for you guys to interview, like, that she's going there, and that she is now on a team where the principal's a woman, like, who's been working in MotoGP for years. Like, that does open doors, and that does create a sense of, like, it's one thing to say you have a right to be here, are just as good, but it's another to see people doing that. And so I'm excited to see her, and I'm excited to hopefully see more young women at the track or at the kart track, and, like, not being put on 4 wheels, getting to do 2 wheels if that's their thing, and like, getting to pursue this stuff. I think motocross is a lot better at getting ladies onto 2 wheels and letting them be competitors. I guess it's one of those, like, rising tide lifts all ships kind of a thing.
I have a bunch of arguments and stuff that could get me in a lot of trouble right now, but I'm not going to risk doing that with the technical difficulties that I'm struggling with.
That's it.
All right. Well, we'll
I
We'll
said,
close up
I said
shop.
I'm not. I said I'm not going to.
no, you're good.
There's no way I can do that with this delay.
I
All right.
think
Well,
it's ripe for conversation, but I guess I just say like tune in and watch us and like support it and come out and we're racing.
heck yeah, that's about how I was going to finish it off. First, I want to say thank you, Lauren, for being here, for joining us tonight and teaching us a little bit more about Build, Train, Race and more about you and your background and your future. I think we're going to have to catch up either halfway through the season or at the end of the season and see how everything went and see what, is there another item in the bucket list after that or what the future holds. I want to thank everyone for listening this week and being here. And as Lauren said, tune into Moto America this year in general. That's what my big push is. Just watch motorcycle racing of some sort. Join us. That's what we do. And if you're watching it, stick around for Build, Train, Race, their program, their racing. That's pretty sweet. You said, just name them off again: the Ridge, Barber,
Road America, the Ridge, Mid Ohio. So
Mid Ohio.
Yeah, May, June, July, August, we'll be out there racing. Come out. I mean, I hope you guys will make it to some rounds. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. I think we've got some in the plans. I know I will definitely be down at Barber, so I will definitely stop by and say hi. And as always, we'll encourage everyone else, find your local Moto America event, go. It's worth it, 100%. You can literally go say hi to Lauren down in the pits, hang out with them all day, or whoever else you want. And we'll leave you guys with that for this week, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks so much for having me. This was real fun. Appreciate what you guys are doing. I think it's so clutch that more people get access to motorcycles and figuring out what the heck all this racing stuff's about. And it's really cool that that's, kind of where you guys step in, is to translate some of that and build a Stoke. We're out here trying to build a Stoke.
Absolutely.
You bet. Thanks for coming on.